Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi has finally released the Epstein list, a collection of 300 politicians and prominent people who were named in the files, telling Congress that all the documents the Department of Justice was required to reveal have now been made public. Kinsey, are there big names that are going to be worried about this release?
There are a lot of names on this list, and they are people that in no way, shape, or form had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein. So I would beg people to keep that in mind. Jeffrey Epstein cultivated powerful contacts everywhere, from politics to business to entertainment.
All right, so Pam Bondi just got absolutely destroyed in Congress. And I mean destroyed. She walked into a hearing claiming she'd released all the Epstein files, everything DOJ has. Nothing's being hidden. And then a Republican prosecutor, someone who's supposed to be on her side, stood up with receipts and proved she was lying.
So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before.
I agree with you.
You twice.
I'm reclaiming my time. I agree with you. I agree with you. During the Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures. But you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable.
And you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them. So I want to move on to another man. Can I answer Donald Trump? I want to move on to another question. Answer your question about protecting. You answered the question. You're saying no. I love this. I want to discuss another man, Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files. Like, he pulled out a list of specific documents that Bondi never released, internal memos, draft indictments, DOJ emails, stuff that the law explicitly requires her to turn over. And Bondi had no answer. She just sat there as her entire defense fell apart on live television.
As Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced in a letter that all Epstein files have been released consistent with Section 3 of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That letter includes a list of more than 300 high-profile names, including President Trump, Barack and Michelle Obama, Prince Harry, Bill Gates, Woody Allen, Kim Kardashian, Kurt Cobain, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bruce Springsteen.
In accordance with all Epstein Files Transparency Act, the list of names includes all persons who they are or were a government official or politically exposed person, and their names appear in the files released under the act at least once, adding that the names appear in a wide variety of contexts. This is huge because Bondi has been hiding behind this claim that she's released everything for weeks now, and a member of her own party just proved that's not true. Here's what happened.
In a letter to Congress on Saturday, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the Justice Department has released all of those files, claiming it had fulfilled its obligations under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That's a little bit up for debate. The letter also outlined its justification for the redactions made in the released files, explaining they were limited to victim privacy, including personally identifiable information and medical details.
Bondi sent Congress a letter on February 14th claiming that all Epstein files DOJ holds under the Transparency Act have been released. She included a list of about 340 names that appear in the documents, and she basically said, "We're done. There's nothing else. Stop asking." But Congress wasn't buying it because the files Bondi released were heavily redacted, huge sections blacked out, key names missing, and lawmakers from both parties kept saying,
We've released more than 3 million pages, including 180,000 images, all to the public, while doing our very best in the time frame allotted by the legislation to protect victims. And if you brought us a victim's name that was inadvertently released, we immediately redacted it. All members of Congress, as you know, are invited to visit DOJ to see for yourselves. I want to take a moment.
This doesn't look like everything. This looks like you're still hiding stuff. And Bondi kept insisting, no, we released everything the law requires. There's nothing being withheld. Well, that claim just got demolished. At a follow-up hearing, a Republican lawmaker who's also a former prosecutor came prepared. He had internal DOJ inventories, oversight correspondence, specific citations to documents that Bondi never turned over, and he went through them one by one in front of Congress and the cameras. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York, a draft indictment from Florida targeting Epstein co-conspirators, internal DOJ emails discussing why certain people weren't charged, all of it specifically referenced in prior litigation and internal records, all of it required under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and none of it released by Bondi's DOJ. The lawmaker didn't just say these documents exist, he proved it. He cited the specific case files where they're mentioned. He referenced the internal inventories that list them. He showed that DOJ knew about these documents, cataloged them, and deliberately chose not to include them in the public release. So Bondi can't claim she didn't know they existed. She can't claim they're not relevant. She can't claim anything except that she got caught lying to Congress about releasing everything. And this wasn't some Democrat trying to score political points. This was a Republican, someone who should be on Bondi's side. But he was so fed up with the cover-up that he brought the receipts and exposed her in public. And Bondi had no good answer. She tried to claim that some documents are protected by deliberative process privilege, a legal doctrine that protects internal government discussions. But the problem with that defense is the Transparency Act specifically overrides those protections for Epstein files. The law says you have to release internal memos and emails explaining why prosecutors did or didn't charge people. That's literally in the statute, so Bondi can't hide behind deliberative process. The law stripped that protection away, and she knows it, but she's still trying to use it as an excuse because she's got nothing else. This revelation destroys Bondi's entire defense strategy. For weeks, she's been telling Congress and the public that everything's been released, that there's full transparency, that anyone complaining is just being political. But now we have proof that's not true. We have specific documents that she withheld. We have evidence that she knew these documents existed and chose not to release them. And we have a member of her own party calling her out for it in public. The contempt case against Bondi just got way stronger. Before, she could claim it was complicated and she was doing her best. But now Congress can point to concrete examples where she lied about what she'd released. That's not a compliance issue. That's obstruction. And the implications are massive. Because if Bondi lied about these documents, what else is she lying about? What other files is she hiding? Are there more memos, more emails, more draft indictments? How many names are still being protected? The documents Bondi is hiding apparently explain why certain Epstein associates weren't charged. That means there are people who prosecutors thought could be charged but decided not to. And Bondi is sitting on the memos that explain who those people are and why they got a pass. That's exactly what Congress and the public demanded transparency about. And Bondi is the one blocking it. So now she's facing even more pressure. The contempt proceedings that were already moving forward just got a huge boost because Congress can now point to specific lies Bondi told. They can show she misled them about what was released. And they can argue that her continued refusal to turn over these documents is willful obstruction that deserves the harshest penalties. Daily fines, detention, impeachment. All of it is back on the table. And this time, Bondi doesn't have the defense that it's just politics, because a Republican prosecutor is the one who exposed her. Her own side turned on her. And that makes this so much worse for Bondi politically and legally. Let's dig into exactly what documents Bondi is hiding and why this is such a big deal. The Epstein Files Transparency Act wasn't just about releasing investigative files like police reports and witness statements. It specifically required DOJ to release internal documents explaining prosecutorial decisions, why certain people were investigated, why some were charged and others weren't, what evidence prosecutors had, what legal theories they considered. All of that had to be made public under the law, and that's the stuff Bondi has been hiding. The first major document confirmed missing is an 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York. This is a detailed internal document that SDNY prosecutors wrote analyzing the Epstein case and making recommendations about who should be charged. These memos are incredibly important because they lay out the evidence prosecutors had, the potential charges they considered, and the reasons for their decisions in Epstein cases. Those memos would identify other people involved or complicit associates, enablers, maybe even clients. And we know this memo exists because it's referenced in court filings from Epstein-related civil cases. Lawyers representing victims cited it. Judges acknowledged it. It's part of the official record that this document exists. So Bondi can't claim it doesn't exist. The memo is real. DOJ has it, and Bondi chose not to release it. The second major missing document is a draft indictment from Florida targeting Epstein conspirators. This is also confirmed to exist through court references and internal DOJ records. A draft indictment means prosecutors got far enough in their investigation to actually write up formal charges against specific people. They identified co-conspirators by name. They laid out the criminal conduct. They prepared to go to a grand jury. But then something happened and the indictment was never filed. Maybe political pressure, maybe a deal, maybe someone powerful intervened. We don't know. But the draft indictment would tell us who those conspirators were and what they were going to be charged with. And that's explosive information, because if prosecutors were ready to charge Epstein associates and then backed off, the public deserves to know who those people are and why they weren't prosecuted. Were they protected because of their wealth, their political connections, their relationship with someone in power? The draft indictment would answer those questions, and Bondi is sitting on it. The third category of missing documents is internal DOJ emails discussing prosecutorial decisions. According to the Republican lawmaker who exposed this, there are extensive email chains between DOJ officials, FBI agents, and prosecutors discussing the Epstein investigation and related cases. These emails would show the internal debate about who to charge, what evidence they had, what obstacles they faced, and potentially who was putting pressure on them not to charge certain people. This is the kind of behind-the-scenes transparency that the Transparency Act was designed to force into the public. But Bondi has been hiding behind deliberative process privilege to keep these emails secret. The problem is Congress specifically wrote the Transparency Act to override that privilege for Epstein files. The law says internal memos, emails, and notes have to be released even if they're normally protected. So Bondi can't legally use deliberative process to hide these emails. The statute overrides it, but she's trying to do it anyway. Now let's talk about the redactions, because that's another huge problem. The files Bondi did release are heavily redacted. Huge black boxes covering names, entire paragraphs blacked out, key details missing. When Congress asked why so much was redacted, Bondi claimed it was to protect victim privacy and ongoing investigations, but legal experts say that doesn't justify the extent of the redactions. Victim names can be redacted. That's legitimate. But you can't redact the names of perpetrators and associates. That defeats the entire purpose of transparency. And we know from lawmakers who've seen unredacted versions that the names being hidden aren't just victims. Al Jazeera reported that at least 6 prominent names were redacted from documents where members of Congress later read them into the public record. So these are names of people connected to Epstein's operation, people who were involved or knew what was happening, and Bondi is hiding them. The political fallout from this is severe because Bondi is not just facing pressure from Democrats anymore. She's got Republicans calling her out publicly. The prosecutor who exposed her is a conservative. He's someone who should be defending her, but he was so bothered by the cover-up that he brought receipts and humiliated her in public. That tells you how bad this is. When your own party is turning on you, when people who should be allies are exposing your lies, you're in serious trouble. This completely changes the contempt proceedings. Before, Bondi could argue that compliance was complicated and she was doing her best. But now Congress has proof that she lied. They can point to specific documents she said didn't exist or weren't required that actually do exist and are required. They can show she misled them about what was released. That's not a good faith disagreement about the law. That's obstruction. That's contempt. And it makes the case for holding her accountable much stronger. The impeachment talk is also getting much louder because lying to Congress is serious. Misleading lawmakers in testimony is potentially a crime. And if Bondi continues to refuse to release these documents even after being exposed, that could be an impeachable offense. High crimes and misdemeanors include obstructing congressional oversight and defying federal law. Bondi is doing both. So the calls for impeachment that we're already building are going to get much louder now, especially with Republicans joining in. The bottom line is this: Bondi's entire defense strategy just collapsed. She claimed she released everything. A Republican prosecutor proved that was a lie. And now she's facing consequences that include fines, detention, and impeachment. The files she's hiding apparently explain why certain Epstein associates weren't charged, who they are, what evidence existed against them, and who made the decision to let them walk. That's exactly what the public demanded transparency about, and Bondi is the one blocking it. So Congress is moving forward with the harshest penalties available, and Bondi is running out of places to hide.